a few news articles I thought were interesting. This one I was very interested. There is an American product to compete with Bluetooth that I saw in the news last week that is intended to connect to smart home devices. And I don't really know why we need another one besides Bluetooth, but it's apparently different to make a mesh network. And there's another one coming from China. Huawei has made this thing called Nearlink, and they're manufacturing a lot of products using this Nearlink wireless protocol. And I think you can only get it if you use Chinese equipment, which is now banned in America, and I think in Europe too. So that's a pretty revolting situation. If the two countries are going to start manufacturing products that do not interoperate, this situation of America and China getting hostile is really getting out of hand. So anyway, 60% less power consumption, 6 times the data transmission speed, and 10 times the device connections, compared to, I guess, Bluetooth. Low latency, offering 1/30th of a millisecond latency, which is outrageous. I've never heard of anything below a few milliseconds for anything. So Huawei is loading their latest devices and leading a consortium of 300 Chinese tech companies to this standard, to integrate the standard into their products. So that is interesting. I guess we need to learn about Nearlink, and maybe American companies are going to need to start making stuff with Nearlink in it.
I think they will try to get a high speed.
Right, high speed and lower power. And so it sounds good. And I know there is some American system that has also come out for smart home integration, but I don't think it's that good. This sounds like a great...
It's used for those IoT stuff.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So that's something to know about. Also, I didn't know this. Amazon is jumping into AI, and they're going to put their money in Anthropic. Now, I don't think I've used Anthropic's large language model yet, but they know there's the Claude chatbot, which I haven't used. I guess I should check it out. I've only used Bard and OpenAI, and that was enough for me to, and then it's many of the open source ones. But anyway, it's a thing to know. Amazon jumping in, they will probably be a serious player. So there is, as you've known for years, facial recognition is now good enough that you can take a snapshot of anybody and search it with image search and find out a lot about that person. Enough that this scared all the police departments and everyone to where Microsoft canceled their use of facial recognition, and so did many other companies, because they rapidly discovered that it's extremely dangerous, because it ends privacy largely, and it also is wrong, especially on black faces, to an outrageous extent, to where all 6 people that have been arrested falsely on the basis of facial recognition are all black so far. It tends to be terrible at identifying black faces. And so, however, somebody on TikTok made an account, and they're a Taylor Swift fan, and they go to Taylor Swift concerts and get pictures of people, and then find out everything about them and put it in TikTok in videos, exposing their work, their boss and their real name and their home and their family and everything, which is sort of scary and horrible. And when they're reported to TikTok, the TikTok moderators refuse to take it down, saying there's nothing wrong with that, which is very strange. Now, I haven't used TikTok. I'm not young enough, I guess, but what I've heard is that they are very rigid about content moderation. They won't let you put up pornography or any kind of controversial stuff, because they really want to keep people not hating it and blocking it. So from what I understand, they're very strict. If you break the rules, they take your videos down, but for some reason they haven't taken this one down yet. And so it's interesting.
Doxing is cool.
What's that?
Doxing is cool.
Well, apparently doxing is cool. I think on Twitter they'll take down tweets for that, at least before Elon Musk they would. You could threaten to kill somebody and they couldn't care less, but if you exposed their home address or something, they would take it down. It's a clear rule. It's easy to understand. Anyway.
I think San Francisco police, they're using cell phone to take pictures to identify people.
Oh, yes. I mean, all the police departments are using it and subscribing to services for it and arresting people based on it, and often the wrong people. That's what leads to all these scandals. But police, of course, really like this because it's probably right most of the time, and it helps them find people. And they have access to things like the DMV database, so they can get information. So Cisco is buying Splunk. And as you know, I'm developing a bunch of Splunk SOAR projects, and my corporate customer is getting cold feet, I think, because Splunk is probably going to change, or you might imagine. Now, one thing I hope they change about Splunk is providing more educational content, because I can't find hardly any good educational content at all about Splunk SOAR. Not even a single book, and the product has been in heavy use since like 2016. But there's not a single textbook, which is nuts. Anyway, so I didn't realize so many competitors are out there. I have heard there is a Microsoft version on Azure and an Amazon version on AWS, and now there's a Google version. On Google Cloud, they've got something called Unified Chronicle Security Operations Platform, which is supposedly an SIEM and a SOAR, which is Security Information and Events Manager and Security Orchestration and Automation. So they've got their own competing products specifically built into the cloud to monitor for security events on your instances and automatically respond to those security events. I know Amazon's had Guard Duty and other ones, a whole series of them, and I think Microsoft has their own too. I forget the name of it, Sentry or something. Microsoft has a product that will monitor your things. So it'd be interesting to try these things. I know the Amazon ones, none of them are free. I don't think any of the Azure ones are free. But anyway, this is one solution. I know there is a Sumo, I think it's Sumo Logic, makes a SIEM designed to monitor cloud instances. And the main thing I know about it is I gave it to my students about 4 years ago, and it was so hard to install that only one student could ever succeed, and I couldn't do it a second time. I got it to work just once. It was so hard to use, it was impossible to get it going. But people told me it was more valuable for monitoring cloud instances at that time than Splunk. But now there's Splunk Cloud, which lives in the cloud, although I don't know if it's particularly optimized to analyze cloud instances. But if you do the latest Splunk projects I put on my homepage here, if you're interested in this, I'm accumulating SOAR projects down here. I've got the bots v3 data here that you bring in, and this is full of cloud data, Azure data and AWS data. So you totally can use Splunk to monitor cloud machines, and it's designed for that. And so anyway, I'm going to have a lot more of these coming up, even though I'm not so sure my corporate customer is going to demand them yet, but I think it's interesting, and I plan to add it to my CNET 50 course. Anyway, so this is certainly the wave of the future. In fact, let me just point out something from this. If you go, Splunk Security Essentials is a teaching product like a textbook that's built into Splunk. You install this thing, and then you can examine all kinds of ways to use Splunk and ways to monitor networks, both in theory and in practice, with textbook type information, with sample data, and with your live data. So it's really quite good, and I'm going to be showing a lot more of it. But the one thing I wanted to show you was their security maturity diagram. Should be, there it is. This is Splunk Security. This is how they guide your journey into incident response. So you start with just collecting some data where you have some security logs. Then you apply a standard taxonomy, normalization, so your logs all use similar names for things that are expected and predicted so you can search through them more easily. Then you expand additional sources like endpoint activity and network metadata. Then you enrich it with intelligence sources like VirusTotal and PhishTank, and proprietary ones you can subscribe to, services that give you information about current attacks and threats, and then automation and orchestration, which is the main thing SOAR does, where you have an instant response team that's been using this data, looking at things and doing things about it, and now they have a system to automate that. So they don't have to keep doing the same boring things over and over. It can automatically take a response. Like if a email has a URL that's on one of these bad lists, it deletes the email. And if there's a URL that somebody comes in an email that's suspicious, you automatically block it at your firewall so nobody can go to that site or something like that. And then they have some advanced stuff up here, including machine learning. So anyway, this is a good start. This shows you what happens. And this is what happens, instant response. Most companies start out with no security at all. Then they get hacked. Then they throw in some security. Then they don't have any instant response at all. Then they get hacked some more. Eventually they decide they need instant response, and they just tell their IT team to do something about these incidents, and they just sort of throw together some kind of response without any organization or record keeping or planning. And then as they keep getting hacked, they gradually become more and more mature at this process of incident response. And this is one way to organize your thinking around as your company moves from one level to another of incident response maturity. Anyway, let me get back to the, we've used up my time. I think that's all I'm going to say about the news today.